Hey, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday. Let me just turn this off. Tuesday, October 27th. We are still kind of plowing through imperialism. Yesterday, we talked about the motives of imperialism. Today, I want to just make sure that you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing. You should be watching the Ed Puzzle crash course on imperialism. It's on your ATL. If you click here, you can access the assignment on Schoology. And then I want you guys to watch our Imperialism China lecture and fill out the notes that go along with the lecture. Don't forget, you should also be working on your thesis statement, putting together your content resource collection, and establishing an outline, hopefully by the end of this week. Okay, when you look at the ATL, all of the hyperlinks are here. Okay, so let me get out of that one and show you our China lecture. Okay, and so here's the lecture notes. And then the fill in the blank notes look like this. Okay, so I want you guys, as you're listening through, you can pause the video at any time, but then fill out the notes on your guided notes sheet. Okay? All right, so let's get to it. So this week we've been focusing on imperialism. So we're going to look at a case study here in China. So what did imperialism, this age of imperialism, do to China? So our essential question for China is, what was the impact of European imperialism on China? So the Chinese have always referred to themselves as the Middle Kingdom, a halfway point between heaven and earth. Here's a map of China. And you can see all the different dynasties, some civil war, the Great Wall being built over here to kind of house the citizens of China to protect them from outside invasion. Okay, so this is the Qing dynasty from 316 to 206 BC. Let me hide this so you guys can see that. The Chinese viewed outsiders as barbarians and saw little value in trade with foreign merchants. Now, this is going to continue from the ancient era all the way through to the modern era. Okay, the Great Wall was built to protect China from barbarian attacks. Okay, so you can see all the red areas that enclose China here in the north was to protect China from outside invaders. So here's a picture of what the Great Wall of China looks like today. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. And just looking at this, you can marvel at the architectural masterpiece of this. I mean, look at the terrain that they've built this Great Wall with all of the different elevation and the difficulty of most likely building this wall throughout the terrain of northern China. Okay, so with the Great Wall of China, it didn't necessarily deter barbarians or outside invaders to attack. So outsiders did come across through the Silk Road. So we didn't talk about the Silk Road, but the Silk Road was something that was established in the ancient era. And it's where Western European areas, the Middle East, would travel by foot through Eurasia to get to China to start to export and import particular goods to see what sort of trade they could set up with China. They would travel this very long distance in search of China's silk. As a result, China really becomes a dominant empire in Asia and the world. China eventually does trade, which helps spread Chinese culture throughout Asia. So they're going to start trading to areas here, in Southeast Asia, all the way to Africa, right? They're going to take in return from Africa ivory, and they'll trade their tea, porcelain, and silk for that. Okay, over here with Tibet and Mongolia, they are going to purchase horses, and then again, they're going to sell their tea, porcelain, and silk. Okay, so again, you can see there's these common goods that the Chinese were known for that you could really only get from China, and those were tea, porcelain, and silk. Okay, they started to trade here in Southeast Asia and then even into China, right? They would sell their tea, porcelain, and silk in return for Japanese silver and gold. Okay, however, outside merchants had to respect, this is a Confucius idea, they had to respect the Chinese culture and obey the rules that the Chinese had established. Okay, in 1644, northern invaders called the Manchus conquered China and created what we call the Qing dynasty. The Qing dynasty within China faced two very distinct challenges that would threaten China's future and strength. Okay, the first challenge was that there was a tremendous population boom that led to the rise in the number of Chinese peasants and in part competition for land, right? Most of the Chinese citizens, just like really the rest of the world in this period of history, were predominantly peasants that were farming, right? With the Industrial Revolution that happens in Europe in the latter part of the 1700s, early part of the 1800s, we do start to see a shift with the enclosure movement and urbanization. However, China was not going through that industrialization period at the same time, so they needed to make sure that there was land that could be used by the peasants and beneficial for them to actually survive and grow the crops needed to support themselves and the population within China. Okay, the second challenge is that European missionaries and merchants arrived in Asia with the hopes of trading with China. Right? We talked about some of the motives of imperialism. Missionaries or religious motivation to spread Christianity was a huge motivation to go out and spread the word according to these European missionaries. Okay, so this was a challenge. They started to come in and wanted to spread Christianity, but also in the hopes of trading with China. In 1793, the Chinese Emperor Quan Long wrote a letter to answer the request for trade by British King George III and says this: strange and costly objects do not interest me. As your ambassador can see for himself, we possess all things. I set no value on objects strange or ingenious and have no use for your country's manufacturers. Okay, and so what is really the message here? What did Emperor Long say to King George? He's ultimately saying that we will go ahead and sell and trade with you our products, but we don't have any use for your products. Okay, so the Chinese had little interest in trading with the West and were able to actually reject trade offers because they were very self-sufficient. They had opened up a little bit of trade, right, with Africa and here in the surrounding parts of Asia. However, they didn't necessarily feel as if they needed to trade with Europe. Okay, China had a healthy agricultural economy, large deposits of natural resources, and manufactured products like silk, cotton cloth, and porcelain. For decades, China exported goods to Europe, European merchants, but refused to buy European products. Okay, again, when we look at trade imbalance, when you're exporting goods but not importing goods, that means that's healthy for your economy because you're making quite a bit of a profit by selling your goods. But who is actually importing your goods, in this case, Europe, Great Britain, other European nations, are very unhappy with this agreement because they don't want to actually pay China more than what they're actually purchasing from Europe. Okay, the British were desperate to find a product that the Chinese would buy. Okay, this is where some of the unethical practices of the age of imperialism comes into play. So what they do decide is in the 1800s, the British start to smuggle in opium from India. So here's India, right? It shares a border with China here on the western side. They start to smuggle in. Now, India was already a protectorate, a colony, a massive colony or civilization that the British had already controlled. They start to smuggle in opium across the border from India into China. Now we know what opium is. It's a plant that it's a poppy plant that has the opium within the flower of the poppy seed plant. Okay, and so by 1835, 12 million Chinese citizens were addicted to opium. Why is this an issue for China? Why would this be an issue for China when you have 12 million Chinese citizens that were now addicted to opium? Why is this going to hurt the Chinese economy? Okay, these are some pictures. These are kind of, houses or bars where they would, socialize and essentially smoke the opium. Okay, here's another picture, early 1900s. Okay, another picture of these opium bars. Okay, the Chinese are they're not going to accept this. They're going to outlaw opium sales and appoint a commissioner named Commissioner Lin to end opium smuggling. He's going to have a very difficult task because he's going against the greatest country at this time, the most powerful country at this time, which is Great Britain. He's going to ask Great Britain to stop the selling and the smuggling of opium. However, Britain's going to refuse. They're going to refuse to end that opium trade. Commissioner Lin then appeals directly to the British Queen Victoria. She's the Queen of Great Britain during this time of imperialism. I want you guys to read the excerpt on the second page of your notes and answer those questions that go with his appeal to the British Queen Victoria. Okay, the British are going to refuse to end the opium trade, and China is going to declare war on Britain. Okay, Britain used its modern navy to easily win the Opium Wars from 1839 to 1842. The Treaty of Nanjing ended the Opium Wars, and Britain received Hong Kong and extraterritorial rights to China. This means that foreigners were not subject to Chinese laws. So China is going to lose the Opium War, and in return, they're going to have to pay the British for war damages through this Treaty of Versailles. They're also going to actually get Hong Kong, and they're going to actually be able to set the terms of the trade, meaning they do not have to follow Chinese laws in the port areas that they are conducting their trade. Okay, in addition to its foreign problems, China also faced major problems within its own people, right? We talked about one of the first challenge was the fact that there was a population boom within China. Anytime you have a population boom, you have to make sure that your economy can support that population. So in 1850, China's population grew so rapidly that their agricultural sector could not keep up. They could not grow enough food to meet the demand of that population. So in 1853, Huang Shuang led the Taiping Rebellion in an attempt to end poverty among peasants. Okay, the Qing dynasty defeated the rebels in 1864, but the rebellion killed 20 million people and weakened China. The British and other industrial powers took advantage of China's weakness to force China to sign unequal trade treaties in particular ports. Okay, these unequal trade treaties are also going to influence something called the sphere of influence. So by 1900, China was carved into a series of spheres of influences, areas where a foreign nation had exclusive trading rights. So when you look at China here, you can see this red area was Russian territory. This green area is the British territory. This yellow territory is French, okay? And then the purple is Japanese, right? So you can see that within China, they created these spheres of influence where foreigners had the exclusive trading rights in those particular areas. Oh, and then here, again, into French Indochina, we have the French kind of solidifying their power here in the southern part of China. Okay, All right, so those are all the different countries. And then Germany had this small territory in the northern part of China. So each of these countries had its own sphere of influence in China, meaning it was the only country that actually had trading rights in that part of China. Okay, the division of China worried Americans. They thought that the United States would be shut out of trade with China. And so here you can see in this political cartoon, this is Lady Liberty kind of peering over all of these other leaders of these countries. So we have China, Russia, Germany, Great Britain, and then you have a Chinese diplomat in the back saying, stop carving up my country. And then here again, the United States is really feeling like they're excluded from this conversation and excluded from the trade in China. So in 1899, the US proposed what's called the open door policy in China. So merchants from all nations can actually trade freely. Now, you'll go over this more next year in US history class, but again, this was a huge push into opening up China and allowing China to trade equally and openly with other nations outside of those that controlled those spheres. Okay, the growth of foreign influence, poverty among peasants, and Christianity starts to upset many Chinese. So the traditional Chinese that were very much entrenched with Confucianism and this idea of Chinese culture, were starting to see their culture deteriorate with foreign influence, Western ideas. And again, that coupled with the fact that many peasants were struggling, and then the rise of Christianity is really going to influence a movement and a riot of Chinese civilians to overthrow Western influence, these foreign countries that were influencing their culture. So in 1900, frustrated Chinese led a Boxer rebellion to expel foreigners from China. Now, I have to note, it's called the Boxer Rebellion because many of them were peasants. They didn't have weapons, and so they trained. Um, they were boxing and training as boxers to use their fists as weapons because they didn't have any other types of weapons to fight. However, an army of 19,000 British, French, American, and German soldiers finally ended the Boxer Rebellion. The power of foreign imperialists and the violence of the Boxer Rebellion led to a call of reform in China. Reformers looked to the West for ways to fix China. So the government within China says, well, how can we fix this? We want to trade with you, but we don't want civil war. So in 1911, Sun Yat-sen is going to lead an overthrow of the Qing dynasty and creates a democracy within China. Yes, it was a democracy. China at one point had a democracy with a written constitution. Sun's goal was to promote nationalism, establish democracy, establish economic security for all Chinese citizens. So over 3,000 years of dynastic rule within China came to an end. Okay. All right, you guys, that's the end of your notes. Don't forget to read Commissioner Lin's letter and answer the questions on this page right here about Commissioner Lin's plea to Queen Victoria and the stopping of opium trade in China. Okay, there are some questions here off to the right. Okay, all right, have a great day, you guys.